Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Super Lunch Bros Podcast, episode number. I didn't look, and I have no idea. I think it's 86.
Gotcha. And I'm Nate.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have to look it up. So today, I promised that we were going to do it, and we are. We are going to talk about the first season of. It is 86. Yes, I'm awesome. All right. I just congratulated myself on remembering the last episode that I put out. I'm a dip. Anyway, we're gonna be talking about Cobra Kai season 1. Spoilers ahead. Possibly spoilers for season 2 and season 3. I will avoid talking about those as much as possible because all I did before this was watch season 1. I don't know what Nate did, and I don't want to ask. As far as I'm concerned,
I can keep it to season 1.
Okay, good. All right. So, I wouldn't be able to because everything would blend together in my mind. I already have a problem disassociating with the seasons that I did watch. You know, the next two and three, coloring my opinions of the characters in the first season based off what I know is going to happen in the future. Although it changes my experience watching it, it shouldn't change yours if you're watching it the first time. And I'm going to try not to influence your decision or your opinion with my foresight. Whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, foresight of things that came out in the past. Anyway, so we are going to be going over season 1 mostly. So again, this is your last warning. We are going to spoil the shit out of this show. We are going to talk about literally everything that happens in the first season and possibly more. This is honestly, the last warning.
If you watched the first 2 seasons and haven't watched the third one, I don't know why you'd be watching this episode anyway. So
that's true. But also, go watch.
Just go watch the whole series.
Before, if you haven't, stop and watch season 1 before you watch the rest of this because it's not going to be fun. I don't know. Maybe you're that guy who likes to Charlie. Maybe you're that guy who likes to watch all the spoilers so that you know what's coming in the movie. You dork. Anyway,
my wife.
My wife. Bringing back references that are really timely. Anyway,
speaking of old.
All right. So Cobra Kai, let's just go over the basis of it. So if you're not familiar with the origin of where this comes from, there was a movie back in the 80s called Karate Kid, right? It followed the story. It followed the story of Danny Larusso, who moved from New Jersey to Rosita, California, it's somewhere in Southern California, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's near Van Nuys. So they moved there. He's on the poorer end of things, lower income family, his single mother, trying to make it work and whatever. And he doesn't really fit in school. It's the classic, fish out of water story. And he befriends was he their landlord, Mr. Miyagi? Or was he just a guy who helped them?
I'm trying to remember what the relationship was.
I thought he was the landlord.
I should have watched the actual movie along with this.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that after when we talk about season 3 because I want to see all the correlations because I know there's a ton of them with the first 2 movies for sure. The first 3 movies as well because the third one, does he go to Japan in the third one? Because
he goes to Japan in the second one.
Second one.
Goes to Okinawa.
Yeah. Okay. The third one I don't remember that well, and then
that was the one with Silver, who is going to be a character. Spoilers if you haven't seen the previews. He's in the preview.
Okay.
He's going to be in the next season. I
did not know that. Season. I don't watch previews for movie.
Not season. Episode 3.
Season 4.
He's in season 4. He's from the third movie. That's what's trying to come out.
There we go. Anyway, there's this. He befriends Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi teaches him.
The maintenance attendant at the apartment.
Yeah, all right, that's it. Yeah, so he fixes things. That's what I figured. Okay.
He's the soup.
So he befriends Mr. Miyagi. He kind of takes on a fatherly role. He takes care of Danny. And he, after getting beaten up at school and being made fun of by a group of popular kids. Anyway, so he finds out, he wants to learn how to defend himself. He's at this is where he went to the beach, right? And he was talking to that girl that he thought was cute. It turns out she has a boyfriend, and then he saw them talking, so the boyfriend comes and beats the crap out of him. After he sucker punched him, by the way. Like, he did do that. Danny does sucker punch. His name's Johnny, all right? So he does.
Danny struck first.
he did.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like Johnny comes in and like throws the boombox on the ground, and then Danny, does he push Danny over? But anyway, I think he pushes Danny away, and then Danny out of nowhere like punches him right in the stomach, and then Johnny beats the shit out of him.
Was it Danny's boombox or was it hers?
I don't know. I don't think that matters.
That would matter a little bit. I'd feel a little bit more justified about that punch if someone grabbed some, like,
I thought it was hers.
Okay, maybe.
I thought it was hers. But the whole scenario is, okay, so now they're beating up on Danny. Danny needs to learn how to defend himself. Mr. Miyagi knows karate, and he starts teaching him karate through like roundabout means, wax on, wax off, if you ever heard that. Sand the floor, paint the fence. It's one of my favorite scenes in any movie, is when he's like, man, this is bullshit, I'm leaving, all you've been having me do all day is do your chores. And then he's like, show me sand the floor. And then he's like, my arm hurts, and he does the whole like healing shoulder hands thing.
Mm-hmm.
I promise this all correlates in the first season. That's why I'm going over these things.
It's important.
So he learns karate through roundabout means. And side note here, there is ancient, I think this was in a Jet Li movie. They talked about this boy who went to go train with the monks, and when he went there, they said, okay, you're going to punch this water, basically like use your palm and hit the water like a bucket of water. And he was like, what are you going to teach? No, he's like, no, just do this, and this is what you're going to do. And for like a month he did that. They made him just punch the water over and over again. And then when he went home, his parents were like, hey, what did they teach you? He's like, I didn't learn anything. All they did was had me do this all day. And he does it again, but he snaps the table in half. Basically practicing the same technique over and over again, like 1,000 times. And it correlates with an actual martial art move. And that's what Miyagi was teaching him through those roundabout means, like defense. A lot of it actually was defense. All those things were defense.
Yep.
Which is the kata forms that Mr. Miyagi is teaching him. It's the basis of his version of karate. Karate also is a martial art that originated in Okinawa through people who came over from China. Japanese people don't want to talk about it, but whatever. Anyway.
Listen, all martial art influences other martial art. All right.
Yes. So he teaches him those things, and then then he also starts picking, like, Johnny is like giving him shit, and then he dumps water on him when they're at Danny goes and pours water on Johnny and his friends at the Halloween dance, and then they chase Danny outside and beat the crap out of him. Mr. Miyagi finds him, protects Danny by beating the shit out of kids. A grown-ass man beats the shit out of kids who were trying to attack him, right?
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. So, and in the end, like, there's more plot points, obviously, with training. Great training montage, by the way. Great, like, for the 80s, it comes with every 80s sports movie is a nice training montage. It's an awesome one. And then they meet in the final, they meet in this tournament, this under 18 All Valley karate tournament, right? And, Danny's working his way through the tournament, and so is Johnny. And then one of Johnny's teammates at Cobra, I don't know if I said this, they train at Cobra Kai. That's the name. Who's the lead trainer is Reese. He's this real scumbag, like ex-military type. Yeah. John piece of shit Kreese. That's his actual legal middle name if you look it up. He's like a former military dude, and he takes that kind of discipline in, but he also has a twisted view, and I would say takes it to an extreme, but he also just doesn't like have a good grasp on reality, because these are children, and he's teaching them life lessons, but he's giving them the wrong ones, and the motto of Cobra Kai is strike first, strike hard, no mercy. That can be applied in a way where it doesn't create a bunch of murderous sociopaths. I mean, it can.
Well, and this is actually a little bit interesting, because you can go a little bit and this is going way too deep for the actual movie itself, but there's a little bit of 80s philosophy on perceptions of different veteran communities and how they were viewed in media at this point. Because Mr. Miyagi was a World War II veteran, John Kreese was a Vietnam veteran,
Yeah, you're right. Oh,
and that
yes.
was definitely a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not cliche, but it was something used a lot.
It's an allegory for the people who served in those wars and what they represented.
At least like media perception
Right,
of how they
right.
were portrayed at that point. So
I did not think about that, but it absolutely makes sense. Yes. Yes, I didn't mention that Mr. Miyagi was a World War II veteran. Obviously, yes, he does have Japanese roots, but he fought for the Americans. He was I don't think
Medal
did
of Honor recipient.
Okay, I was gonna say I think he received the Medal of Honor. When he came home, he found out that his wife had died giving birth to their son, and neither one of them made it.
Yep.
Pat Morita, holy shit! By the way, like I know that's a silly '80s like coming of age teen dramedy like action bullshit movie, right? And it can be tossed away and like not thought of, but go watch Pat Morita's performance just in that one moment. Like the whole movie's great, but like it's extremely moving.
Yeah,
it feels real, like the way he's like getting drunk and crying about it, and like you can tell like he has a lot of repressed like emotions and memories because he's a very conservative person and like he keeps everything in himself. Anyway, so that's super awesome. They meet. They go to the tournament. One of Kreese's, was it Get Him a Body Bag? Was it that kid who?
I'm always terrible at remembering the other Cobra Kai characters, even though, they do make an appearance.
So he hurts Larusso's knee with an illegal. I think did he do that with an illegal shot? Now I don't remember how it led up to the final tournament. This is where it's failing me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. What's important
what is and is not an illegal shot is also not very
don't get
clear.
Me started. The way their point system, like someone got kicked in the chest, but no point was given, and then another guy gets kicked in the chest and like 2 points. Like, that's not how karate works. So in the end, of course, it's all been culminating it culminates in this final thing, and it's all led up to this: Johnny Lawrence versus Danny Larusso for the All Valley Under 18 Championship, right? Cobra Kai versus Miyagi's student, who is just Danny. And they both, it's first to 3 wins, first to 3 points. Generally speaking, a clean strike to the midsection or face is worth, it scores a point, or depending on how hard the strike is, it could be 2 or 3 points. I'm not well versed in karate, but I did watch that episode of The Office multiple times. So Sensei Ira has taught me very well. So if you watch the end of this, there's some really hokey karate going on. It's 2-2. The next person who scores wins. And then there's the famous crane kick, right? Where, he stands up. If do right, no can defend, which is wrong on so many levels. Like it's incorrect grammatically, karatically, all those things. It's just wrong. He stands on one leg with his other leg up, and then he does a switch kick, and then Johnny runs face first into a foot and loses the tournament. Right? That's basically all you need to know from Karate Kid. It was pretty lengthy explanation, but we summarized a basically 2-hour movie in less than 10 minutes.
I would say the overall big takeaways from how the original movie presented was Cobra Kai bad, Johnny Lawrence framed
asshole
at the time as classic 80s, high school jock bad guy.
Bully, yeah.
Yeah, bully. Johnny Larusso, coming of age, or not, yeah. Danny Larusso, coming of age, class hero journey arc where he comes in and, faces that adversity, goes through the entire, standard hero's arc process and comes out at the end overcoming that adversity and winning. And we are the champions playing at the end, although not in this movie.
Yeah, I don't think there was.
Fast forward 34 years.
So, a little bit of history on the show Cobra Kai. I didn't watch it when it first came out because it came out on YouTube Red, right? I heard some murmurs about it being good, but it wasn't from anybody that, I like hung out with or talked to a lot, and then at some point I think you watched it and told me it
Yes.
was good.
When I came up to where I live now for essentially the job interview, it was a 2-day assessment up here. I was in the hotel, and I think they had dropped it from YouTube Red to having the first season for free
Oh, okay.
because the second season was coming out, and that's when I watched it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes, like you said, so I do have the Wikipedia page up just to remind me of what happens in each episode. We don't have to go over the whole thing. Like we don't have to break down every episode. But 34 years later, we open up on Johnny. Basically, he's a washout.
There's, I feel like there's one more thing that needs to get added here
Yes.
because before we get into this, How I Met Your Mother has to get brought up because I feel like that was an integral part of how this got revamped.
Really? Why?
Uh, Neil Patrick, I can't even remember the names of the characters because of how long it's been since I watched that series. But Neil Patrick, a main theme of Neil Patrick Harris's character in that series was him thinking that Johnny was the good guy and the hero, and Danny was the bad guy, and that got brought up in several episodes where both actors actually made appearances playing themselves in the series. And I don't know producing wise behind the scenes if that helped them get it off the ground, but that came out like I want to say 5 years prior to Cobra Kai coming out, and there was a couple episodes that brought that up.
Well, Ralph Macchio was in 2 episodes of Psych, and one of them he was a cop, and he was like the guy who trains Sean and Gus. Anyway,
Yeah.
they make a lot of references, like karate references and quotes from the movie, but obviously he's not the same character. It's just like an inside joke.
No, but this one was like there was one monologue where Barney, that was his name, character does an entire like dissertation monologue on why Danny Larusso was actually the bad guy of the series.
Good.
Which
Danny.
or,
Oh, you're right. Danny Larusso.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Danny Larusso.
and why Johnny Lawrence was actually his hero of that movie. So
Okay. So, this series starts with showing Johnny's life, right? It shows him he's working as like it says handyman, but really it just seems like whatever he can get at all. Like, yes,
Yeah,
it involves tools and putting up a TV, and he puts it on the wrong wall and says, hey, can you quit bitching at me, and gets fired. He's a drunk. He does nothing with his life. You find out within the next couple of episodes. Actually, no, it's in the first one. You find out, his stepfather. It's actually pretty interesting how they cram all this exposition in, and it feels kind of natural. Where, the guy who plays his stepfather comes in and says, I'm done writing you checks. This is the last one, and he's like, this one you can have, and then he rips it up, and he's like, oh, when was the last time you saw your son? Basically saying like, oh, hey, he has a son that he's estranged to. He's 14 years old.
Yep.
Like obviously, he's not with the mother anymore. His father has money. He's old, and they don't have a good relationship, and it's his stepdad or whatever. And all those things are pretty like, it leads to him like getting drunk at a convenience store. He's sitting outside the convenience store in one of my favorite scenes of the entire first season, where the homeless lady says like, get out of here, this is my corner. He's like, I'm not homeless, that's my car. Like, he does look pretty freaking homeless.
Yeah, it was great.
So then we're introduced to within the story, you're introduced to Miguel Diaz, who is kind of Johnny's neighbor. And it's a young kid from not in town. He's from out of town. Some young kid who we find out just has a mother, doesn't have a father, but he does live with his grandma as well. So it's a little different than Danny.
Living in an apartment complex that's not the best.
Right. He's growing up in a place where, they're a little underprivileged, lower on the economic scale, and his mom is working, like always working, and it's hard, for her to be involved in his life. He's not one of the cool kids, which we find out really early as like this is man, it's kind of important. Anyway, he's picking up Pepto Bismol for his grandma, so he gets it trying to check out, and the guy's making fun of him, and then he talks to Johnny, like the cashier is making fun of Johnny because just watch. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it again. That scene is worth watching. Just how gross everybody is being, except for Miguel. He's like such a nice kid. And he grabs the Pepto Bismol, goes outside, and then Johnny goes outside, and then these other kids go in to go get like beer and condoms. They mention that like, yeah, we'll get condoms too. It's like, oh, these must be the cool kids because they're drinking and having the sex. So they come out pissed off at Miguel because he basically said hi to him, how you doing, because like they go to school together, and now that cashier knows that they're not of age. So then they start picking on him, call him Rhea for diarrhea because he's carrying Pepto-Bismol, poured on his head, start beating the shit out of him, and then one of them lands. This is important. I'm going in detail in this because this moment is really important. One of them pushes Miguel onto Johnny's car, and Johnny sees it and goes like, hey, get away from my car. Not, hey, quit picking on the kid. He's like, don't ding up my car. So in this scenario, he eventually does the right thing and says, hey, quit picking on the kid. And then this is where, like, I want to punch the kids because, like, they're just being assholes to be assholes. Yep. And they're picking on Johnny now. Like, oh, man, but whatever. What are you going to do? And then he proceeds to beat the shit out of kids who
wrecks them.
Yes, it's not close. But they did assault him first. So regardless of age or whatever, there was enough of them, and they're old enough to where like I could see it going that way. Cops show up. They just see a bunch of kids who got beat up, and then this guy who's already had problems. They pepper spray him and take him to jail. Mm-hmm. And that's when his stepdad bails him out and all that stuff. So Miguel asks him, and they find out like, oh, he does karate, and Miguel's like, you should be my teacher. He takes the money that his dad gave him, he puts the check back together, and goes and pays for the old Cobra Kai studio. Puts a sign up, and he basically opens up Cobra Kai again. Oh wait, hold on. I also forgot
like too much detail there, but there was also the part where his car got destroyed.
I did forget that. Yeah. So he was drinking. He drove off, and yes, he's driving drunk. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. He goes back to his old high school, and then he's sitting outside, and then these girls ram into his car, and he's like, "What the fuck? Like, what are you doing?" He tries to track them down. They run away, and then his car gets towed to Danny Larusso's auto shop. So Danny is a auto dealer. He owns a dealership. He's done very well for himself. He's got the whole kick the competition theme. He gives everybody bonsai trees. He's like a really likable, nice person. He's got everything.
He leans in hard to the little bit of recognition he has from his time in the Valley.
Yes, and he's also, the karate champ, and everybody talks about it, and like, oh, he was a former champ and this and that. Well, in this process, we are going pretty in depth for this first episode, but it sets up the rest of the thing, and we can skip over a lot of the other stuff because some of them are just training and fluff and other things. So,
Danny's like, and it's not just like, all right, he's got a car dealer. Like, he's doing very well for himself.
Yes.
Obviously, money, no issue. He's got 2 kids. Sam, who, comes into play for hitting John's car.
You find out in the first episode, that's his daughter. His daughter was, Danny's daughter was in the car that hit Johnny's car.
And then he's got a son who basically, classic son move, not impressed by their dad at all in any way for anything he's accomplished, and just completely doing his own thing, no interest in karate, no interest in any of those things. Like, kind of
No, he's a little
comes,
chubby kid who likes
yeah,
playing video games.
comes across immediately as like an extremely spoiled kid right off the bat. So
Yes.
completely different from, you know, Danny's growing up. And then Sam, kind of classic teenage girl stages at this point. So she had trained and did karate with Danny when he was younger, but, you know, clearly went away from that and, you know, stopped and was doing her own thing at this point. So he's kind of really just focused on the dealership, focused on, making money at this point, focused on his business.
Yeah.
Oh, and smoking hot wife,
Yeah.
who is one of the most important characters for the
She's
series
my
and
favorite.
making, yeah.
She's my favorite character. Hands down. It's not even close. She's my favorite character. She has some of the funniest moments, like the best, like most realistic moments. Like,
She's like an anchor to reality
yes,
for this
it's
entire series.
fucking fantastic. Without her, like if this was some like stereotypical like I guess you could call it like soap opera wife, who plays everything up and plays into all the emotion and all of the like the back and forth, like this show could be total shit.
Yeah.
Like she really helps the show like move along and stay grounded. It's fantastic. Blah, 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 blah. He opens up the studio. Yes, we went over that. All right. Okay. Oh yeah. So he goes to get his car back. Danny finds out that Johnny needs his car. He says hi to him. Kind of gives him a little guff for like, haha, I remember I kicked him in the face and blah blah blah. But he's doing it in kind of like a loving way, basically saying like, hey, it's good to see you. You know how when you see people that you didn't get along with in high school, but you have no like ill will, like they didn't. Like you've been successful in your own life, so you're just like, whatever. Like, oh, hey, you remember, like, oh, we did those things. That was pretty shitty. Like, we were really mean to each other. That sucked. Like, remember the time we got in that fight? Yeah, that was stupid. And like, you see someone, and you're not gonna be best friends afterwards. You weren't best friends before, but you have like this light interaction.
See, I actually interpreted that differently. I know
Oh,
that's how it came across, but I actually felt like he was purposefully trying to rub his face in it. Like, I really did feel like the ill will, and like the ill will snapped back so quickly the moment that Cobra Kai came up. Like, I really felt like he was basking in the moment of his success compared to where Johnny was, and you know, putting him like, I felt like he was actually just being a bully at that point. I actually didn't think it was coming from a good-hearted place.
all right. I disagree with you only because I've like this. Okay, I
I know.
agree. If the first time I watched it, that's exactly what I thought. I'm like, oh, Danny's being a fucking asshole. But then you find out like who he is as a person. Like he's not a bad guy. Like it felt like he was being genuine in what he was doing. Now later on, what he does like super douchey, and that's where he takes like
Yes.
on like the bully role. We'll talk about that in a second. Before we get anywhere else, like this is where the first episode ends. He goes and buys a studio and he calls it Cobra Kai again. What were your thoughts on this episode starting off the season? We're not going to go episode by episode for the whole season, but this is probably the most important for the entire series because this is the one that started everything.
So I think what is good,
Out of 5, what would you give it, real quick?
I give it a 5 for this reason, because what's good about this series is characters. Like, this is a character-driven series. It's driven by, compilation of individual character development, and not like, because ultimately it just revolves around like high school level karate. Like that's it's
High school bullshit is what it is.
like a combination of like a little bit of high school drama and mixed in with, you know, high school karate and like people that have done karate for a year. So like, you know, all that aside, it's really just focused on, all right, here are these interesting characters with their individual motivations and how they grow and how they all intertwine and how their lives kind of rub up against and impact each other. And I think in terms of setting up the series and giving you those interesting characters right off the bat and kind of catching you up on, all right, here's the characters you know and how far they've come. And here are all these new characters sprinkled in and how they connect to the characters you know, giving you just enough to be like, all right, cool. I'm interested in what is going to happen to Miguel right off the bat, which is something that you want. It's one of the most important parts of the series is Miguel Diaz. and it gives you enough to where like, all right, cool, how this kid and Johnny are going to interact and what's going to come from their relationship is interesting to me.
So
You know,
who did you feel? Who was your favorite character from this? Like, you have to get everything else out of your mind. And I know that's hard to do because we've watched the series at least once, more than once. Um, who was your favorite character? Like, this first episode, at the end of it, who are you like? Oh, I'm rooting for this guy. I hope he wins. I hope he kicks ass. I hope everything goes well for this guy.
all right,
Whatever.
all bias aside, Miguel, like that's who I feel like you come out of
I
the
have
first
a
episode rooting for.
I have some I think it's unpopular. My wife and I got in an argument about it last night.
Are you going to say Sam? Or are you going to?
Oh fuck no! God,
All right,
I
I was going
hate
to say.
Sam.
Yeah,
Spoiled brat. No, Johnny. Like, it not. It was one of those things where like I know he's not a perfect person, but based off this episode, I really wanted him. Like, it seems like he's trying to do shit in his life and change things. Like, it's gonna take him a while, based off of who he is and how entrenched, both in the past. He doesn't understand how to use technology. We find that out later. Like, he's, living in the past because that was his best time. He's one of those guys who peaked in high school, and, he's kind of hit rock bottom in his life, and he's trying to get his shit together. So, he hasn't done anything egregiously wrong to where it's like, oh, he has poor moral character that he's totally reprehensible and unredeemable. Like, yeah, he beat up some kids, but they were being assholes. This is how he knew how to take care of that situation. Like, yeah,
I'm gonna give him some shit for that because he
yeah,
also knew enough to dissolve that situation without hitting any kid in the face.
yeah, sure. Like I said, he's not a great guy. Like, he's not. That's why it's not like a popular opinion, I would guess, to say that like only after the first episode, not knowing anything else, I've actually watched the first episode like again, and I'll tell you like
The deadbeat dad one's a hard one for me on the first episode.
no, okay. See,
Like that, because he does not make any moves
no,
in any way in that direction in the first episode,
no.
and I get like, all right, he's part, and we'll talk about that as we get
He
into
has
the
to
series.
start. He has to
He's
start
starting,
somewhere.
but I think he's a little too far below that bar for me at this point to be rooting for him, knowing he's got a 14-year-old kid out there who he's got no part in his life like that.
That's true. No, like again, he's
Yeah.
not a. If I took first episode Johnny and was like, "Hey, is this a good person?" Like, fuck, no, he's
The answer's
not. No, he's terrible. Like,
and that's why I argue.
No, Miguel. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying like, I watched it again, and I still think I was like, I remember the very first time I watched it, I was like in my head, I was like, fuck yeah, I hope Johnny like like makes the studio and beats the shit out of Danny, and I like.
Now when you take all bias out of it and you have the history of the series, yeah, of course you're rooting for Johnny.
Not Cobra Kai series. Like, you can bring in Karate Kid, like that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway. So he starts training Miguel. Also 5 out of 5 for the first episode. I'm not gonna rate it. We're not gonna rate every episode. I don't want to. Some of them are more filler. Some of them are less important. It's not. We can rate the season at the end. So Miguel comes in and starts training. He does the whole like sensei thing. Like, quiet. I love it. It's super official, but it's got this backdrop of like this rundown bullshit studio, and Miguel's the only student in there. And student's a strong word. He's more just like the janitor at this point because he's just cleaning up everything. Miguel sits down at a table at lunch with these 2 other nerds. One of my other favorite characters in the series, Dimitri, and Eli. Dimitri's one of my favorites. I love him. He's one of those. I agree. He's the younger kid version of Danny's wife. Like, he keeps everything grounded in reality. It's like, what are you gonna do if someone punches you in the face or elbows you in the teeth? Call the police. What do you? It's like, he's like, you do know the Nazis lost, right? Like, I love that stuff.
Yeah, and then Eli, soon to be Hawk.
Yes. So Eli is another nerdy kid. He's got a cleft lip that obviously he had surgery on as a kid, and it left a nasty scar, so people give him shit. It's either this episode or the next episode. This the principal or somebody comes in. Oh, hold on. Damn it. It happened. All right, cool. Anyway, so the principal comes in. And is like, hey, bullying's bad, cyberbullying. Like, and I'm not going to name names, but I had a mother call me, and she said that her son's people have been making fun of his facial deformity, and everybody knows it's Eli. So, it doesn't help the situation, and it makes it worse because if you remember when you were a kid, if your parents got involved, and all of a sudden you're like that's not good.
And this episode was a little bit of filler, like in terms of. I would classify this more so as a filler episode than anything else, because it does like start to push things along a little bit, but it's still mostly just like, all right, here's a bunch more characters that you didn't get to see in the first episode, and kind of what has happened a little bit as the outcome of the first episode. So you do finally meet, Johnny's son, Robbie.
Robbie, who's a real piece of shit.
Yeah, you get kind of like a quick little introduction to him, Eli, Dimitri, little more from whatever Sam's boyfriend's name was, and just kind of like it adds a little bit more, but nothing really happens much in this episode.
Yeah, there's not a ton.
Yeah. It's kind of it's a setup for what is a more interesting next episode.
Yes, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties over here, and it's giving me the stupid encoder warnings. By the way, if anybody knows how to use OBS Studio better than me, which is probably a lot of people, give me tips, because this is driving me crazy. Anyway.
Anybody that listens to this series, so maybe not that many people.
Of the 6, there's probably one of them.
Yeah.
I think it's probably all right.
Cool.
Yeah, hold on. Let me... All right, I have changed the settings.
And we're back.
I have changed the settings, damn it. And apparently it's going to increase my file size, but hopefully it won't stutter and be shitty anymore. God dang it. This happened a couple weeks ago, and it drove me nuts. Like, I hate having bad video quality. All right. We shall continue. Robbie's an asshole. He is kind of homeless, sort of. Like, he lives with his mom. She's a piece of shit.
Not there.
She's never there for him. We find out later on, we're gonna.
He's got shit friends.
Yes. Oh, I was gonna say we can lump all this in, but basically he has friends who are criminals. He's a criminal. Like, he's stealing shit. Like, he stole that guy's laptop. They're selling it. Like, he finds out that his dad opens up Cobra Kai, and he wants to get back at his dad, which comes back a little bit later.
He's a kid with no good influences in life and no strong motivation to do anything good.
Yeah. And then at one point, John. Oh yeah. So this is. Yep. Oh, Danny ends up going to the studio in the the start of the second episode is where Danny's driving to, like, having a great morning, going to work and stuff, and then he looks over and he sees the Cobra Kai studio, and he gets like flashbacks and things aren't great for him, and he's like, oh fuck that guy, like, and then he gets suspicious of Sam and her boyfriend, who's Kyler, who's this guy who beats a shit out of Miguel. He's the one who fought with him in the first episode. He's a real scumbag. And then, I mean, that's pretty much it for this episode. Yeah. Moving on, like, Johnny he's trying to find more students because, he has to pay rent, and, he doesn't have any more money. When he bought the place, he probably put down the first month's payment. Obviously, it's also not cleaned. It's not up to code. The guy comes in, and he says, like, oh, cool viper or whatever, or cool rattlesnake. And he's like, it's a cobra. Oh yeah, Cobra K. Ha ha ha. Like, it's stupid. Yeah. He doesn't get doesn't get any more students, which sucks. But they go to, there's a Halloween dance coming up. Sound familiar? There's a Halloween dance. It's very reminiscent of the one that happened in the movie, the Karate Kid movie, because Miguel wanted to go as Deadpool, but he's poor and they couldn't afford a Deadpool costume, so he goes as poor man, which is what Johnny calls him, because like his grandma was trying to make him a Deadpool costume out of like a sheet, and then he was like, it started out as Deadpool, then it turned into something else, and now it's just generic superhero. And he's like, you look poor. He's like, you look like poor man.
I forgot about that one.
So he's like, you can't go like that. He's like, you
Yep.
got to go with something cool. And he gives him the skeleton costume that Johnny went in. So he goes as a skeleton to the Halloween dance.
Yep.
Which is interesting because he's the bullied one.
And then gets the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, so they're in the locker room. Yes, locker room / bathroom. Going to the bathroom. Kyler comes in, he's talking shit about how, he was trying to sleep with Sam. That's a C plot I don't really care about. I don't give a shit about it. Kyler's a piece of shit. Whatever. Anyway, so the other two, Dimitri and Eli, end up leaving, and then Miguel's like, it's like, quit. He's like, stop making fun of him or whatever. And he's like, oh, what are you gonna do, Rhea? He's like, that old guy's not here to save you. So Miguel front kicks him like into the into the lockers, and he just stands there, and then they come after him, and like I love that part because he goes, oh shit, because he doesn't know what to do after that.
Yep.
And then he kind of gets a shit beat out of him. Johnny takes him back. It carries him back to his. We found out in the next episode. He carries him back to his mom, and she wants him to have nothing to do with it. Like his mom wants him didn't know that he was involved in karate to begin with. Does not want him involved in that stuff. And Johnny says like, I'm sorry, like I shouldn't have got involved. Blah 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 blah. What happens in the second one? Oh yeah, Johnny starts. Obviously, he gets drunk. He keeps drinking again.
Yep.
Oh, this is where Kyler tries to rape Sam. So that's fun. Does some nice sexual harassment or sexual assault inside a movie theater.
Did not work out well.
No, because she overheard Kyler treating Dimitri, Miguel, and Eli like shit, and she's like, "I heard what you did. That's not cool." Blah blah blah. And then he goes. Let's see. Own life wasted. Johnny tracks down the resentful. Blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, and then Johnny. This is where you meet a little more in depth, like Johnny's ex-girlfriend, who is the mother of Robbie, and he finds her at a bar. She's being a real piece of shit too. I'm gonna say that a lot. There's a lot of people who are just like total scumbags,
especially in the first season.
Yeah. Robbie doesn't want to go back to school. Blah blah blah. Yeah. Anyway. Oh yeah, and at one point, when he was drinking, he went and spray painted the giant dick on Danny's face on the billboard, and I know that's vandalism and blah blah blah. It's fucking hilarious. It was funny the way that they played it off. It's also where the other dealership, the guy makes fun of Danny, and then Danny goes over there. Is like, I'll be like, not saying I'll beat the shit out of you, but basically like he's like, oh, I didn't. He's like, I did karate. He's like, I was a karate champ. Like it's a real thing. And then the other guy, that other dealer, Cole, who's also a piece of shit. Like it's like, oh, you did karate. I should really watch out. Hi-ya, hi-ya, ya-ya. And then Danny does a spinning kick and kicks his
boba tea
out of his hand.
Which I'm pretty sure is technically assault. If you hit something that is connected to somebody else, I'm pretty sure that actually qualifies in California as assault. Yeah.
I mean, looking at somebody wrong in California is probably assault now. So
fair enough.
Bunch of pussies. Which, so that's one of Johnny's favorite phrases. I think it's awesome how he says it. Like it comes up earlier. He's like, "That's for pussies," and then
yeah,
Miguel does a great job because he's like, "Oh, we shouldn't stereotype the sexes," and like he's like, "Quiet."
Yeah,
I think it's really
part of Johnny's rough edges, which
I listen, he like
which are
again,
good for his character. Like it is
again, I don't think his approach is the best, but he's making a lot of good points, right? And again, he's not committing like disgusting crimes. He's not a disgusting human being. Like he's just like more old school, right? And he believes people should be tougher. And one of those things is like calling people pussies for not being tough. Yeah, in the 80s, that's what he did, and he hasn't like that's where his mind still is.
he's still watching Iron Eagle.
Yes, I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh yeah. Only because of bad aircraft movies. I'm a connoisseur of bad aircraft movies.
Oh, nice.
Yes. That's a funny one.
Let's see.
On a complete side tangent, that's a hilarious one because that's literally like supposed to be a military brat flying a jet. Like it's not actually a movie about someone in the military. It's like him taking a jet to go rescue his father,
Oh,
who was like captured in a random country. I know. It is literally supposed to be like an 80s kid taking a jet to go like rescue his father in that movie.
I'll pass.
Yeah, it's horrible. Really bad movie. But still, it's just funny. Side tangent. But to
also,
summarize,
Stealth. Stealth is another bad aircraft movie. I just know that one. It's so bad.
Horrible aircraft movie. But to summarize, first 4 episodes, all build up.
Yes.
Like character introduction and build up. Like it's a lot of filler. Like it. I could see someone.
I wouldn't say filler.
I could see someone watching the first 4 episodes and like still being hesitant on the series if you weren't a huge fan of Karate Kid.
Okay.
Like they're good, but it's definitely, I would argue, leading up to episode 5 where you start to really have like kind of that initial like peak in the story arc.
Yeah, all right. I mean, it's hard for me to disassociate myself because I am a huge fan. So,
Of course,
it's hard for me to just say like, oh yeah, I could see why someone wouldn't want to watch. I agree that episode 2, 3, and 4 are build up and not as interesting. Especially, here's the thing: there are a couple plot lines I couldn't give less of a shit about.
yes.
Anything involving Sam, don't care. Most of the stuff with Robbie, do not care.
Yeah.
Like they're not compelling people. They don't have like compelling arcs. I don't think their acting is that great. Like, and that's the other thing in this series.
And I have to chalk that up a little bit to the characters that they surround them with too, because like the characters they surround Miguel with, extremely interesting. Thank you. So like all the side characters around Miguel are interesting,
Bye, Miranda.
compelling. Like you're actually like, all right, cool. The characters around Robbie, no depth whatsoever.
No,
they're just kind of
one-dimensional.
boring story. Same thing with the characters around Sam. Completely one-dimensional, no depth, boring.
Yeah, they're all the cool girls, like the what are they called?
Valley Girls.
Valley Girls. That's it. Literally and figuratively. Yes.
Yeah. So like, there's not much for them to play off of. Whereas like, immediately right off the bat, there is something for Miguel to play off of with the situation he's put in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which brings us to
episode
lunch.
5. Episode 5 is where a lot of things come to a head. It's pretty cool. One of the things that Danny does, this is where Danny kind of takes a villain turn.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. I would say this is one of those moments where his wife, Danny's wife, makes the series.
Yes.
Because without her saying the things that she said and putting in perspective that people around him understand what's going on, I'll explain this in a second. This series would take a turn for the less realistic, less compelling, I would say fluffy and also kind of crappy turn, right?
I mean, it would just basically turn into a dichotomy where Danny is a complete villain.
Right.
And not a sympathetic character.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happens is Danny knows the guy who owns the strip mall. So he invites him to dinner. It's pretty funny. There's interactions basically because the guy is Armand, I think is his name.
Takes him to a country club that I think he had gotten kicked out of
for
like
peeing in the shower. for
revoke
peeing
from.
in the
Yeah.
shower. And he doesn't understand. His English is probably not his first language, based off of like I know that actor from other things. Obviously, he also was in Borat, the first one.
Oh, that's
Um,
right.
yeah, he was his manager or whatever.
Yep.
So this guy, has some weird concepts, but he's a business owner. And then Danny offers to buy the strip mall, and then
I mean, and it's not, and it's interesting because it's a very like, it's one of the more like evil things that Danny does in this series
but
because
it's
he's not
also
actually,
realistic.
yeah, but he's not actually trying to buy it. He's just trying to inflate the prices to
Yes. So
price.
that's what we find out is he just wanted to show interest so that way Armand increases the price and makes it so Robbie can't or uh, Johnny can't afford to keep Cobra Kai there anymore. And then when he tells his wife this stuff, and he's like opens up like the 13-year or the 2013 wine. I
And
don't.
he like brags about it. He's like,
That's what
"Ha,
I'm saying.
I took care of that shit."
Yeah, and he pops open like the special wine, and he wants to celebrate with his wife, and she's like,
And she looks
"What?"
at him like a disgusting pig.
She's like,
Just like,
"Did you?" She's like, "Did you think about the other businesses that were there, or like the other people?" And he's like, no." And she goes like, "Well, I don't know what this has done to you, like, but like, I don't know if you need to take a weekend and go do other, like go run in the hills or go work out. I don't know what it is, but like you need to go figure your shit." She's just saying like you need to go figure your shit out. You're acting like an asshole. And that's one of the moments where like I think like her character grounds the series in reality because some most people would have that reaction like, hey, like I know you don't like this guy, but did you think about anybody else? Like you're ruining other people's lives. Like not fucking cool.
yeah.
This is also one of the coolest moments. Like it's one of those ones where if you're running on a treadmill, like I don't know if I might have been in mile 9 of my 12-mile run, where this episode comes on and the Kyler is spreading rumors about Sam, that she blew him in the theater and she has a falling out with her other friends, and he's spreading the rumor and everybody's making fun of her. So she goes up to him and you think, oh, Sam's gonna go beat the shit out of this guy because Sam
And
knows
she
karate.
squares up like she's going to.
Which
Like,
yeah, she's about to go beat the shit out of him, and then he says something else, like he's like makes fun of her, says like, oh, I guess she takes after her dad because the penis and the billboard thing, and like that's one of those moments where you're like, I hope this guy gets fucking hit in the face with a chair, like that would be great. And then Miguel comes to the rescue, and Miguel's basically like, dude, back the fuck up, like what's your problem? And then this is where you get to see the culmination of all of his training. The
next scene is basically like half the trailer for the series.
Was it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
Like,
I don't remember that.
it was definitely one of the big drawing points of like, this is where it's going to lead to.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I know what happens after this, so like this moment is fantastic, but it's not the best. No, but it's so good. He shows all of his like all the things he learned. He beats the shit out of Kyler and all the people in there. It's in a cafeteria. There's decent, I would say, decent choreography. Not the best of the series, definitely not the worst.
Nope.
Some pretty good choreography. Anything involving Sam and Robbie is my least favorite choreography. Honestly, they are terrible at it.
This was good, and it was enough to where like, and this is what I'm talking about. Like, if you can get through to this episode, and you were like kind of iffy on the series, this is kind of where it draws you into like, okay, this is going to get interesting because like you kind of have all that training, all that build up, and like you said, when it comes to a head, like they do a good kind of spectacular job of kind of making the most of it.
Yes.
And making it a very impactful point.
Yeah, and this moment is so good. It's everything about the series all packed into like probably like a 45-second. Well, no, if you count the lead up to it, probably like a minute and a half a scene. It's so good. And then if you find out afterwards, Miguel tells Johnny, like, oh, and everybody filmed it. That's another part. Like, there were people filming it and put it up online, which you find out more about in the next episode. But he's talking to Johnny afterwards, and Johnny's like, wait a minute. You beat the shit out of all these kids in front of everyone in your school because they were bullying everybody? And he's like, yeah. He's like, that's awesome. Like, that's so good. And then he's like, oh, he's like, but now he's like, now your mom's not going to let us do this for sure. And he goes like, no, don't worry. The school called and my grandma picked up. And it's like, she's never been more proud of me my entire life. Like, she's another one of my favorite characters, the grandma, who doesn't get as much play later on in the series. But the first season, she's important for the development of Miguel's character. She's super cool. I like her, especially at the end of the season. We'll talk about that in a second. Like, it's one of my favorite lines in the last episode. Anyway, go through that. They fight, and then Danny has this realization, a flashback to when he was given the car by
He has a little bit of like a
Miyagi.
I don't want to call it like that kind of initiation back towards redemption, to where he's like, all right, I need to figure, like he has that self-actualization that he's let himself get out of balance,
Right,
and has to figure his stuff out.
And then he goes back to Mr. Miyagi's tombstone, and he has like a nice sweet moment, especially because if you know who, like Pat Morita passed away obviously in 2005, and this episode is dedicated to him too. I think it's a good episode to dedicate to him since it's probably the best one.
Definitely one of the best ones of the first season.
Yes, and it's a really touching moment, especially because if you imagine like that's actually Pat Morita, it's really touching, grounded in reality, and it's a really good moment in the series that keeps you interested in the series because there's good characters who are compelling and who you're rooting for or rooting against. Like, the villains in it aren't over the top, and the ones who are like relegated to like C and D plots, or they're just used as a plot device to get beaten up and get out of the way.
Yep.
And then the next episode, there's a giant line, and like Johnny's probably gonna have to close down the studio, but there's a huge ass line outside the dojo because of the video, and they found out, oh, Cobra Kai taught him how to do this, so all these. And they're like nerdy, geeky people, probably people who are being bullied. I would say one of the more stereotypical things that they do in the series, being like the nerds that they are, because this is the part of the series which I feel isn't as realistic anymore. But I guess I might just be too removed from high school. Maybe it's still going on.
I would say like the next two episodes were kind of, because we're coming down from that high of that peak. Yeah. There's a little bit of filler development, who's going what direction kind of thing. So like you could almost kind of couple the next two episodes together in terms of what happens.
Yeah. There's this huge influx of new students. Johnny's teaching style doesn't necessarily agree with everybody's sensibilities.
Yeah. Surprising nobody.
Calling them all pussies. This is where Dimitri has a cool he's like, what are you gonna do when someone squares up and elbows you in the mouth? Dimitri's like, call the police. And then Dimitri speaks out against him, and because Johnny makes fun of Eli for the lip thing, and he keeps calling him Lip. And then Eli leaves, and if you don't know what happens later in the series, like, this is one of those moments where I could see, like, wow, Johnny's a fucking asshole, and I could understand why you hate him. But you find out later, like, oh, like, we don't have to like hide it anymore. Like, I think it's all it comes out together. Eli ends up coming back. He like gets a freaking mohawk because he tells him he's like get like a tattoo or something to distract from your lip, do something different so nobody can see it. And then he comes back and he's got this giant ass blue mohawk.
Yep.
And they calls him Hawk, and that changes. He gets a new name because of that, and he has this giant boost of confidence, which turns Eli. I mean, it turns Eli kind of into like a villainous character. We've talked about this before separately, and actually I think on the podcast before we've mentioned stuff about season 2 and 3. He's, again, this is spoilers for 2 and 3, and it's important because Eli doesn't get a ton of play in the first season.
Nope.
But he's a really good example of what can happen when you bully someone and you belittle them and treat them like shit, and then you give them the means to defend themselves, but no guidance past that. It's just like, no, here's how you defend yourself, and then that's it.
Well, and a lot of what I think is important about Cobra Kai and what it starts to dig into is essentially role models and influence and what an effect that has on people's lives.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, everyone for the most part is a very close reflection of the people that influenced them most and had the most impact on their lives. And so, like, Eli gets the tools, but he doesn't necessarily get the attention from Johnny, and he doesn't really get the same type of like coaching that Miguel does.
Right.
So like,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was so like, and you don't really get any like view into Eli's home life or anything like that. Obviously, the mom that called the school, not thinking super hard about bullying and like what effect that would have on him for that type of complaint. But like Eli just kind of gets that, same capabilities for the most part as Miguel, but without that actual real like coaching attention, without that personal development that Johnny gives to Miguel.
Yeah, and that just made me realize something. It plays out later in the series as well, but I think in the first season it's also evident. Johnny's not the worst teacher. He's not the worst mentor, because you can learn a lot from, as long as you have like a foundation in modern day, right? Like, and you're a good-hearted person, you can take a lot of the things that he's teaching you and apply them in a healthy way.
Well, and I think it's interesting because Johnny's a good mentor in spite of the mentor he's had.
Right. John
and
Kreese,
because when you look at the
asshole.
people, because like the people that Treese directly influences, and ultimately, spoilers, Eli or Hawk becomes more of Kreese's student than becomes Johnny's student. He kind of attaches himself to that, and that's where he gets
spoilers.
And that's where he gets more of his personal attention from. So like, and that ends up being a direct reflection on him. And Johnny being as good as he is in spite of the shitty stepdad, in spite of the shitty teacher. So like, that's kind of something that shines through for Johnny's character, is what he's able to bring out in spite of his influence.
And so I think he's a good mentor, but a bad teacher. And what I mean is, one-on-one, what he did with Miguel, I think Miguel, like, eventually it goes, he goes a little bit too much in one direction, but when he's being a mentor and he's directly involved in his life and it's just him, he's doing a pretty good job. He's helping him with his confidence, helping him get in shape, being able to defend himself, helping him. Like, he gets a girlfriend, he starts dating Sam. And
most of those good things are more his philosophy than Cobra Kai.
Right. Yeah.
Because like when it's just him teaching, like pure Cobra Kai, that's usually when you get the worst of him.
I mean, I guess, but if you want to call Johnny, like when he says "don't be a pussy," yeah, okay, I understand. I don't know how many people are going to watch this video, and I understand like it might not fit with the modern sensibilities and language and all those other things. But from his perspective, he's not saying anything about your character. He's saying don't be weak. Right?
Yes.
Like, yes, you might not like the word that he's using, but the message is don't be weak. Like, these things are for weak people. Like, people who quit, people who take no for an answer, people who give into pain. Like, these are, I think it's the Marines where they say pain is temporary or pain is weakness leaving the body.
They took that, but yeah.
Yeah, sure, whatever. They co-opt it. Anyway, that's one of those things where there's truth behind it, and how you apply it can vary, and the language you use to get your message across can vary, but the message itself is, I would say almost like a good foundation to build a strong, both mentally and physically, like, human being. And he even says that, like, being strong physically doesn't matter. You have to be strong on the inside and the outside, which is awesome.
And I mean, the culmination of what this entire series is about the balance between the two philosophies, between Johnny's and Daniel's, because there is a happy medium between the two. Neither one is really perfect in its own right.
No, because one of them is far too passive, and it doesn't give
Yep.
them like it doesn't teach you life lessons when I don't want to talk about this stuff because I don't remember everything about the next seasons, and I want to be able to talk about it in detail.
Yep.
But basically, the balance aspect that Danny is teaching versus the aggression, act first, be the aggressor attitude that Johnny's teaching, like they're not so different from each other, because what Johnny's teaching is a balance of strength on the inside and strength on the outside. He wants you to be a strong person, but like balance it. Like if you're a weak-minded person and you're physically strong, like you can't apply yourself completely, and vice versa. If you're really strong mentally, but you don't have the physical wherewithal or ability to do the things that you want to do, well, now you're also not able to apply yourself 100%. So it's about balance. Like you don't have to be the strongest mentally and the strongest physically, but together those things work. Like you can produce a pretty like strong, effective human being, and that's pretty freaking cool coming from a guy who grew up with like one of the most fucked up possible situations you can imagine.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay, moving on.
Yep. Summarize episode 7. I mean, most of it just revolves around Johnny having he has a high point in the series where he is able to explain why what he does is important. So, after Karate Kid 3, Cobra Kai got banned. So nothing to do with what happened in the movie that Johnny was in, Karate Kid 1.
Right.
It was
It had
Karate
nothing to
Kid
do
3
with
that
him.
called,
Yep.
where everything got banned. So, he goes in front of the board of karate, which, and like
not the board of karate, the board of local like under 18
of literally the All Valley Karate Tournament in this area
like
just south of
PTA
San
meeting.
Francisco. Yeah, pretty much like a PTA meeting with less people there, maybe. But he goes through and has this very important story arc where he's able to convince them to allow Cobra Kai to be reinstated. That way, Miguel and some of his other star pupils are able to compete in this tournament, and really makes it more about them versus it being about him.
Right, and he does a good job. Like there's a really fun lead up to it where he like he says like we're out of it, we can't do anything about it, and Miguel's like, but Cobra Kai never died. Like Cobra Kai, we don't say no for an answer. And then he
calls him a quitter, basically.
He's like, we don't take no for an answer. And he's like, no, but that was about girls. This is real life. There's rules. And Miguel goes, since when do you care about the rules? He's like, yeah, you know what? You're right. And then Miguel catches himself and he's like, wait, hold on. Like, you can't just go. He's like, what are you going to do? And he's like, I'm going to go down there and beat him up. He's like, no, that's not going to work. So Miguel, like, dials him back and like helps him realize like, oh, hey, you gotta be professional, go talk. Like, and he's like, what do you normally do when in situations where you don't agree with people? He's like, I just punch him in the face.
And like I said, this is like, we're kind of, in terms of this season, the high point of the relationship between Johnny and Miguel in terms of mentorship. Because I think when you get to the last episode or two, you start to have that friction come out where, Johnny starts to regret a little bit of how far he's taken things, especially about
plus
the last
also Robbie.
And the Robbie influence, which comes in near the end. But this is definitely like this episode, and Johnny is kind of like the high point of their student-teacher relationship and Johnny's like personal development coming through the series.
So we didn't talk about it, but Robbie, in order to get back at Johnny, goes to work at Danny's car dealership. Again, plot I don't care about.
I'll skim through really quick. Robbie goes to work there, ends up actually liking Daniel. Daniel takes him under his wing without knowing that Robbie is actually Johnny's son.
Yes, and also he teaches him karate, but he does it in a roundabout way. He teaches him the moves by having him jack up cars and wash windows and wax a car, wax on, wax off. He teaches him all those things, and he even does it in a nod to the audience type of way where like Robbie's like, all you're having me do is bullshit work, whatever. I quit. And he's like, Danny goes, I love this part. And then he goes and like tries to punch him and like shows him like how effective it is. And it's pretty cool. So, but he also takes him to like the secluded area, and so he takes him under his wing because Sam said no, and Sam didn't want to start doing karate again. His wife, again, the realism here is so good. Like he goes like, "Hey, you want to go outside? Come outside with me?" He's like, "I thought I'll go do spin class with you. You want to? If I do spin class, you want to come with me and do some karate in the shed?" And she goes like, "Oh, Sam said no, huh?" Like that is so realistic to like how like a married couple reacts to each other. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, but it's like we can go out there, roll, like do some karate." And he's like, "Yeah, remember what happened 10 years ago when we went out to the shed and did some karate?" And then they point to their kid, their son. So, like again, that's one of those things where it's like it's grounded in reality because that is a situation where like it doesn't have to be karate, it could be literally anything else. It's very realistic. So he starts training Robbie. Robbie has a conflict with those guys. They come back, the guys who he's friends with or whatever. He tries to fight them. It doesn't matter. That's stupid shit. Doesn't matter. Robbie ends up, through working at the dealership, goes to Danny's house through a roundabout thing. Meets Sam, and it sets up this love triangle between Robbie
and Sam, and then
Miguel.
Sam and Miguel having some rockiness.
So they go to there's this party. This is another culmination of things. It's very interesting. There's a lot of role reversals. So one of the girls who went to Cobra Kai, who was an overweight girl, Isaiah Robinson's daughter. I forget what her name is. What's her name?
I can't remember, but doesn't she not continue on into season 2? It was part of
season 3 or season 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she, I think because she left after. We'll talk about it when we get to it. Anyway, so she notices that the popular chick, Yasmin, is throwing a party, and like she invites all the nerdy people there first. So then when Yasmin gets there for her birthday party, all the nerdy kids are there. And then this other chick, Yaz and Moon, are also the friends of Sam. Again, like this is why I don't care about it, but it's important because it mixes with the A plot. I hate this love triangle shit. It doesn't do anything for me. In fact, it's just really aggravating that it has to be involved in what's going on. But anyway, so
and it's ultimately to add to the friction between Miguel and Robbie.
Well,
so you have the friction coming from Robbie towards Miguel because he's jealous of the fact that Miguel is essentially a pseudo son to Johnny at this point.
Right.
Miguel doesn't understand that friction and doesn't understand where that hatred is coming from.
No.
But then Miguel ends up having this friction of jealousy towards Robbie because he feels like he unrightfully, I think he's drunk at this point.
So like, Miguel starts
feels
drinking.
This jealousy
but there's an important moment here where Yaz starts talking shit to the heavier girl, and the girl, like, she bumps her on the way out, and then like she yanks her underwear up and like gives her a front wedgie. Melvin, I think that's what that's called. As if Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey has taught me correctly. So Yasmin walks off in disgrace. Miguel starts drinking, and then, again, through a convoluted plot lines, Robbie ends up getting driven by Sam to the party, and then she's going there, and like they go to see Miguel. And Miguel's drunk, but she shows up with another guy, so Miguel gets jealous and says, like, what the fuck? Tries to punch Robbie, ends up punching Sam. Very reminiscent of, again, the same thing that happened before, only it's weird because you had just all had this build-up where Miguel was the new guy. Miguel was the new Danny. He came into town, and he was the new one. And then that's why I really dislike the character of Robbie, because like, oh, he's also the new kid, and he's also the new guy, and he's like also the one with the bad background. There's just too much. There's too much shit in there. It's too much overlap. It works itself out in the later in the series, but in this season, I hate the love triangle shit. It's fake. It's stupid. It feels wrong. It feels really convoluted and shoved in there. Anyway, Sam and Miguel are fighting. Whatever. Sam and Miguel start fighting. Blah, 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 blah.
Ooh, God. Now that you bring it up, I actually think it would have been more interesting if Robbie and Sam never had a relationship. Like, if it was actually more of a brother-sister thing. And it was just a completely unnecessary jealousy coming from Miguel.
Yeah, that would have made more sense.
Like, God, that annoys me now. Because now I'm like, I wish they would have gone back and rewritten that a little bit better, because that would have been a more interesting, like, it would have been a more interesting friction point.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
There's a really cool moment in this is the penultimate episode, right? So, of the first season, it's really good moment. There's this part where he's Robbie and Johnny. Anyway, again, this is where his wife really brings the series home for me. Johnny goes to not Robbie. Johnny goes to Danny's house, and he's like, "Hey, your goons wrecked my car." His cousin lit his car on fire, and they're standing out by the pool, and like they're talking shit to each other. His son comes, Danny's son comes out, and he's like, "Go away, kid. You don't want to see me beat the shit out of your dad." And then he goes away, and then his wife comes out and is like, "So what's going on here? Don't worry, we have it under control." Like, yeah, it seems like it. It's like, as much as I'd love to watch two adult men like punch each other into next to the pool and fall in, I'd prefer not to do. I forget the exact words.
Something like she didn't want to clean the blood off the.
Oh yeah, she's like, I don't feel like cleaning the blood off of my deck.
Off the grotto or something.
Yes. So would you guys like to come in for breakfast? And then this is such a good, like, this story is so good. Like, this is such a good moment because he goes like, so Johnny, you want to come inside? He goes, I could eat. But they're still standing in like their fight stands. It's so good. So they go inside and they hash it out over breakfast, where basically the wife is telling him like, "Hey, we have all." He's like, "Luckily, we know somebody who has a lot of cars. Just give him one of the cars."
And this is also a little bit of a breakdown of the animosity between the two, because in this, like, a lot of that hatred is coming from them not knowing what's going on with each other.
Right.
So now this is where Daniel finds out that Sam was involved in the original hit and run of Johnny's car. Like, this kind of, it breaks down a little bit of those barriers, so it allows them to be a little bit more like, all right, we're not friends, but maybe it's not that we're completely enemies.
Yeah, it's
one of those parts that breaks down the friction a little bit between the two, which is important.
They have that moment. I'm sure it happened before this movie, but it's the one that rings true. Like, in my head, this is the first one that I think of. The Tommy Boy moment in the car where they put on music. It's like, "Oh, you like REO Speedwagon?" He's like, "What man doesn't?" And they start singing together, and he's like, "You know about cars? What man doesn't?" Like, they both find out, hey, we both like cars. We both like 80s music.
Surprise, he owns a car dealership.
Yes. They end up going to a bar together, start drinking, find out more about each other's past. And then they basically, like, we cut in as they, like, pulled up to Danny's house. This is later on in the night. And, like, they're about to have a Rocky 3 moment in which they reference Rocky 3, saying like, "Oh, hey, let's go in the dojo. Will be for fun. We'll just have a karate match and be like one time, like one." And like it's coming. Like, it's culminating in something negative because it has to. But it feels that all that stuff leading up to that felt like real natural. I liked all of it. What I didn't like was Robbie standing there and being like, "What is my son doing here? Oh, he's your son? What was this? Like some giant scam?" And so everybody hates Robbie. Danny hates Robbie now. Johnny hates Danny again, and we're back to square one. And then that's how that episode ends. And then the last episode is the tournament, the karate tournament, right? So Cobra Kai is reinstated. They all show up. Johnny's there.
Fucking wreck shop.
Yeah, dude, they're doing great. There's this fun character who's like a F plot character. Like, it has nothing to do with anything, but his mom is one of my favorite moments in this episode. Oh, yeah. She's like, "Yeah, come on, I love you," and he's like, "I just want to take a moment so we can stop hatred." And then Johnny leans over to Miguel. He's like, "Kick this pussy in the face." Because that's like, I understand that there are people like that, and there are people who appreciate
it.
And
and I think he was last year's tournament winner too.
Yes, he was. Yeah, but that's what, like, my favorite part, because like that's a real thing. Like, there are people who just like, "I came here to watch karate. This is pissing me off." Like, it's just nice that somebody actually said it, and that's one of the things. Like, Johnny doesn't have a filter; he just says what he's thinking. So Robbie shows up as unincorporated. whatever, or unassociated. So Cobra Kai makes it through. Hawk does pretty well. The heavier girl does pretty well. Which Aisha is her name.
Yep.
Aisha does pretty well.
Yep. Aisha, Hawk, and Robbie all go pretty far in it.
Yeah, and then Miguel and Robbie are on the opposite side of the brackets, which obviously you know what that means. They meet each other in the finals, and that's how it happened. You know, Hawk.
He takes the dirty shot, and like they set it up as like a very cliche thing of like, all right, this is going to be similar to the first one where, you know, one of the members of Cobra Kai is going to take a dirty shot on Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, he pushed him in the back.
Like I thought he kicked him after.
Yeah,
I thought he kicked.
Yeah, he was talking shit or something, and like he walked, like he got up, and then Hawk like kicked him in the back afterwards, and somehow that hurt his shoulder. I don't know.
There were it hurt his shoulder a little bit, but then I think there was another point where Hawk didn't he grab on him?
No, that's Miguel did that.
Okay, that was Miguel.
Yeah.
All right.
And this is another moment where my wife and I kind of got into it. Because I'm still rooting for Miguel because I know his story, and I also know where he ends up. I know where he comes from. I've watched the entire series. She's watched 2 episodes, and she thinks Miguel is a piece of shit. So,
yeah, no, see, this is where I'm like, there's an important acknowledgement of how much outside influence has on individuals in this. So, like, Miguel he's a product from like his good parts of
his mom,
his mom,
the hard
his grandma.
work, his grandma,
his mom, his grandma,
and Johnny.
But also,
honestly, Johnny,
and that's what I mean. The good parts are those individuals. The bad parts is essentially Kreese, like the leftover of what Kreese let kind of work his way through Johnny, because that was the only way Johnny knew how to train people. That's what finds its way into.
I would say that's not it. I would say it's him. It's Miguel's pettiness and him being like his human nature. And yes, okay, all right, I'll give you that. Like maybe it's fed by the strike first, strike hard, no mercy thing, right? I guess the no mercy because he brings that up, but it's really just fed by his petty jealousy. It's not fed by anything else. Like this isn't coming from Johnny. This isn't coming from his mom or his grandma.
No, but I would argue if Johnny had trained him without, and not necessarily just like the no mercy thing, but like the win, because it was a like distorted view of win at all costs, and like an absent like.
Okay, all right,
yeah,
all right, I got you.
Which is ultimately like what Cobra Kai was to begin with, anyway.
Yes.
That kind of like distorted view of win at all costs that came from Kreese's fucked up, philosophies. So like, I felt like that was kind of the influencing factor that Johnny didn't recognize, and then he did recognize it in that moment. And it caused him to realize, like, I kind of let this horrible shit that influenced me negatively now influence my students.
Yeah, because you see it in his face afterwards when Robbie's on the floor. Well, we didn't talk about that yet. So, the other thing. This is my favorite line of this is when his mom is like, "I'm so nervous. Why aren't you nervous?" And she's talking to Miguel's grandma. And he's like, "I'm so nervous. Why aren't you nervous?" And then his grandma leans over to his mom and goes, "I smoked the joint in the car." she's just, and then the rest of the episode where she's smiling and clapping and stuff, you're like,
"Oh yeah,
that's my grandma right there. I love that. I wish that was my grandma."
She's awesome.
Yeah, she's so cool. Anyway, so they meet in the finals. Robbie's another good subverting of expectations. Robbie's in the back. Danny meets him in the back because he decides he's going to coach him for this. Danny meets him in the back, and his shoulder hurts, and they're talking about it and wanting to go on. And then Danny goes like this.
It was a very meta moment.
Oh, it's so good. He goes like this, like he's going to fix his arm, and he goes, "Medic!" It's like, okay, this is real. Like, because that is what someone would do. It's like, I don't know how to do that. Like, but it is for the audience, and I thought it was, I loved it. So they meet in the finals. It's 2-2 because of, again, convoluted plot. It has to be like that. In reality, Miguel should have beat the shit out of him. There's just one spot, which, again, this is part of, like, the D plot. I guess the C plot, where Danny mentioned offhandedly, like, oh, there's this one kick that, you have to balance on one hand, and then you can kick it with 2 feet. whatever.
It was dumb. Yeah.
It's not an effective kick. This is where knowing MMA, like, that's a bullshit kick. It does nothing. Like, there's no force in a push kick off. You can't plant with your hand. Anyway, so it's tied up, and then Miguel ends up winning with clean technique. He does nothing wrong. I mean, he hits him in the arm, but he's like, who cares? Like, he didn't do anything illegal. Punching someone in the shoulder is not illegal.
I thought there was a moment where he grabbed and pulled on his shoulder.
He did
after...
to get up. Yes. Not cool.
After...
So he does hurt him, and he gets warned for it, which, okay. But that's the thing is, like, if you did that and his arm was fine, would it be a warning?
But it is implied that he purposely did that knowing he was trying to hurt it. Like,
yeah, of course he is. He's trying to win, right? And he sees an opportunity. And listen, coming from where we know, okay, coming from the MMA world, and I know this is bringing realism in here probably too much. Like, if I'm in a fight or if I'm like trying to win something, right? I'm trying to win in a tournament through combat, and I do things within the rules, and it's whether or not you consider it to be ethical or above board, like kicking someone in the feet. Like, we both know that, like, that's stupid and that's a bitch move, but hey, it's not banned by the rules. You can do it. Or laying on top of someone with barely moving, like, that's technically winning, so you can do that. It's, you know, it's not the way we'd want it to be done, but it's the way it's done. And that's what he did. He did the thing that he needed to do to win. He punched him in the shoulder and kicked him in the chest, whatever, he wins.
But there's also an aspect of it where it's a high school karate tournament.
Who cares? It's
like,
one day a year. You're telling me I'm going to fight fair for like 2 seconds and then not get the fucking trophy? Suck it. No way.
Like, is it worth sacrificing your honor and integrity?
Get out of here. Yes, it is. There's no honor and integrity.
Yes.
Yes. Because it's not like this is one of those things where, like, we could be friends afterwards. I'm still going to punch you in the shoulder. I don't care.
Oh, no, not the punch. It was the after, you know, it was the in between round grabbing and pulling out.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, like
fine.
That is the only real like malicious thing that I felt like Miguel did. But it was also important because Miguel doing that was a plot point for Johnny to realize he had taken things in a bad direction.
Yeah, and Johnny looks over at Robbie and says, like, you know, like, he looks over. And he, you know, he feels bad. Oh, yeah, when, what's his face? That was actually a really cool moment. When Hawk hurt Robbie, he ran over to Robbie and checked on him to see if he was doing okay. And then he yelled at Hawk. He's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? He's like, you can't do that. So, you know, you realize, like, Johnny is not Kreese. Johnny is not Kreese at all. Yep. They're not the same. Yes, he's hard on his students, and yes, he's hard. Like, he wants them to be tough, but he is not Kreese. And that comes out more in the second season, which we will probably go over. Are you available next week?
Yes, I am.
Cool. We'll talk about it next week. Also, there's probably a UFC next weekend. So maybe we'll watch it, and then I don't know. We'll figure it out. I think there is a UFC next weekend. Yeah, but Rob Font versus Aldo.
In summary.
Yeah, so what do you think? What did you think of the first season?
Out of 5. Fantastic first season. Like 5 out of 5. Like hands down, one of the best first seasons of almost any series I've ever seen in its totality. Like, obviously, like, there's some stuff that, you know, I can give or take, but, you know, as a whole, as a series, and like drawing you in, yeah.
The worst episode I'd probably give like a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5. Maybe like a 3.5 out of 5. There's a couple episodes in there, but the way it starts, the way it builds, the way it ends,
the episodes
series.
that are 5s, it's like, it's almost a 6 out of 5.
I was gonna say it should be higher.
Yeah,
it should be 7 out of 5.
It outweighs it to a point where it really does balance everything out in a way to where even the filler-ish episodes have enough going for them that it moves the overall plot forward in every single episode.
Yes. All right. I mean, I think that's it. That's a good spot to end. I thought it was good. Like, we've talked about it. Like, if you watch this before you watch it, you're weird. Go back and watch it. I mean, I love you for watching. I don't care. But go back and watch the first season again. Enjoy it. Or for the first time, if you want to keep up with us, next week we're going to be talking about season 2. So go watch season 2, please, because we're going to spoil the shit out of it next week. And if you want to watch the whole series, go ahead. It's fantastic. I also started watching Squid Game because everybody watched it, so I figure I might as well hop on the train about 3 months too late. And then what's the other? Oh, Cowboy Bebop, the live action show on Netflix.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, if we want to talk about it some other time, we can. I don't hate it, which is high praise for a anime live action interpretation. All right. So thank you all for making it this far. You're awesome. Love you guys. Really appreciate it. We will be back to normal schedule. We're talking about UFC next week because there is a UFC next weekend.
Interesting one too. Clay Guida fighting.
He's already fought this year, like twice actually.
He's fighting December 4th.
Yeah, he's fighting Leonardo Santos.
His 400th UFC fight.
Dude, he's so crazy. Brendan Allen's fighting Chris Curtis. That's a good one. Rob Font versus Jose Aldo's really good. Brad Riddell versus Rafael Fiziev. That's good.
His first UFC fight was in 2006.
Yeah, he's one of the old school guys. It's pretty cool
Yeah.
to see him. He's still good. Actually, dude, this is a really good card.
Yeah.
Like
Rob Font Aldo is.
No, look at the prelims.
I haven't looked at the prelims yet.
Maki Patolo versus Dusko Todorovic, who is just a really good striker. He got caught last time with his hands down, being too loose in there, but he fights crazy. Manel Cape is a great striker. Jake Matthews. Cheyenne Bays versus Mallory Martin. Don't care. Alonzo Menafield against William Knight is this guy who's I think he's 5'8", and he fights at light heavyweight. He's super jacked.
Mickey Gall back in a reasonable place on the card.
Against Alex Morono.
Yep.
Morono coming off of the win over Cowboy Cerrone.
Cool. I like this.
Yes, there's a really good card. I'm excited for this one. Last week's card was boring.
And it's a fight night, too. That'll be fun.
I don't know if you watched the Caitlin Vieira versus Tate card.
I did not at all. I'm happy we didn't talk about it today.
I did. I talked about it. I watched it. Guess what? Every fight except for one was a decision, and they were boring. Dude, most of the fights didn't cross the 50 combined strike total mark.
Yeah, I did not miss anything.
No, you didn't miss anything. All right. Again, thank you guys. I'm probably going to run out of room on my computer because of the increased file size. I don't know how this works. I'm bad at encoding.
And my Cyber Monday conspiracy.
Oh, yeah. Also, Microsoft sucks. Oh, crap. My computer just went out. That is so weird. No, I was looking at getting a new one. I don't know. Thinking about it, the prices just aren't there this year. Everything with the silicone shortage, it's just doesn't make sense.
What's funny is every time you talk about getting a new one into your computer, Text Mining is taking that and sending your data to Microsoft, letting them know you're thinking about getting a new computer.
Good.
Only slowing your computer down further.
Great. I have a secret for that. I just steal other people's computers. No, I just commit theft, larceny. I appreciate y'all. I really do. I'm hoping Nate's back for more. Coming up.
Schedule moving forward will be much better. Especially 2022 is going to be the year of me podcasting because
the year of Nate. He's back.
Yes, I'll finish my degree and we'll have significantly more time on my hands.
It will no longer be super lunch, bro.
There'll be some bros back.
There'll be bros back. All right. Love y'all. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. I didn't say that at the top, but you should know that by now. Means a lot to me that you guys watch this stuff. It really does. I love talking about MMA. I love talking about fighting. And I do love talking about movies and TV. It just hasn't come up as much because it's an oversaturated market on YouTube, and I don't feel like my opinions are valuable.
I disagree. But
well, no, it's just dude, how many reviews of Suicide Squad do you want to watch? I know I have one on my channel. Who cares?
All
right. That's it. Later, everybody. Love y'all.
Take care.